on with me today. We go way back, don't we, Gisela? And she
Yes, yes.
How many years do you reckon?
I'm not entirely sure. It must have been just after COVID or so.
Yeah, so about 3-4 years.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and I worked side by side with you to make action plans and everything with your Reiki business, which is why I brought you on as an expert today to share this with our community, because I think Reiki is so powerful from both the human aspect, because of the care that we give to animals that can be quite draining on our energy, but plus you've got a couple of people within your coaching group that are animal Reiki practitioners, so I wanted to hear a little bit about that as well. But before we just press record, you just held up something very exciting.
Yeah, I bought your book, because you're spot on. My coaching experience with you was amazing. And it really did keep me on track and get me in the right headspace, in the right energy to focus on building my business and scaling my business. And so I thought, if Elle has written a book on how to build a business from scratch for dog owners, I will have to read it, because I have built a busy practice. I've had a busy practice for a very long time now, and I want to start teaching other people how to do that. So I thought, I'm going to pay attention to what Elle is doing, because I know she does it well.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's amazing. So let's talk about you. How did you get into Reiki in the first instance? What journey got you to this point?
Ooh, that's actually quite a story. So how do I put this in a nutshell? Reiki came into my life really by accident. I was an academic and I already had 2 children. And when child number 3 snuck in and I nearly died of septic shock post baby delivery, that kind of made me assess what's important in life, what I have capacity for. And so this academic career that I had put all my eggs into this one basket kind of flew out of the window, because we realized bringing up 3 children, some of them needing 10 times the amount of parenting than most children do. We decided it was a job that we wanted to do ourselves and that we needed to do ourselves. And so I had no plan B. I did decide I didn't have capacity to bring up our own children and do a self-funded PhD. So there I was with nothing. And at that point, Reiki came into my life. And before that, I would not have been open to energy healing. I was very much an intellectual in my head. But somehow this experience of nearly dying recalibrated everything. And Reiki is the thing that I pricked up my ears, and I thought, this is interesting, because it's both physical and spiritual, really, right?
Yeah.
But then I found a style of Reiki that suits me very much, which is very grounded and very concept focused, clear, simple concepts, traditional Japanese Reiki. The intellectual part of me was still very active, and a lot of what goes by the name of Reiki seemed a bit it didn't add up, it didn't make sense. There were too many contradictions. So I went back to the roots of the practice and learned traditional Japanese style. And that's what I've been doing ever since I discovered it in 2006. So that's what I do in a basic practice, and that's what I teach.
Yeah, and I'm going to say it wrong, that's why I was hoping you'd say it first. How do I pronounce the style of Reiki that you do?
So this is Jikiden Reiki. So it basically just means traditionally passed on Reiki. It hasn't been every other Reiki style I'm aware of been adapted for Westerners, whereas this has been kept in its original form. Reiki, sometimes people think of it as an ancient healing practice, but it's not. It's just over 100 years old. So this is very much the original simple teachings without all the Western thinking that's changed it quite a bit.
So how would coming to you for Jikiden Reiki be different to what maybe we've experienced from a Western Reiki practitioner?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, all healers work with spiritual energy and earth energy. So I'm not in the business of dissing what everyone else does. When they come from the right place, tap into these energies, they get amazing results. And I used to practice in a Western lineage first, and I had amazing results. I just wanted to understand why. So that's why I went back to the Japanese roots. So what's different when you, as a person, when you come to see me, is that initially were very body focused. So like Jikiden Reiki has a super clear framework for understanding how the diseased or ill at ease body responds to Reiki. So the basic idea is that bodies given and minds given the right circumstances heal. So what we need to do is remove the stressors that make innate natural healing systems sluggish and dysfunctional and wake it up again and put in the stuff that bodies and minds need to heal, So one of the things that really boosts that innate healing ability is this high frequency energy that we kind of access when we practice Reiki. And so then the particular skill in Jikiden Reiki is to develop sensitivity in the hands. So basically the skill is observation. And so the body you're paying attention to body feedback, and the sensations in the practitioner's hands tell you where the body is struggling and needs a little bit of extra help. So in a nutshell, how Reiki heals is by boosting this innate healing ability. So when you cut yourself, I challenge you not to heal, like even with a really deep cut within 5 days, or maybe at the very most a week and a half, your body will have repaired itself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when you add Reiki at that moment of injury, you can see that everything happens a little bit faster, neater, cleaner. That's an easy way of explaining the effect of Reiki on the body, because it just accelerates what the body naturally does anyway.
Yeah.
So you can see that the blood is congealing a little bit faster, that the wound is drying up faster, that the crust is forming faster. And if you kickstart this healing process immediately, most of the time you get no scarring whatsoever. So like that's quite a neat way of kind of visualizing for people what happens when you boost the body with extra high frequency energy.
Wow, that is brilliant. And we both came together because of the chiropractic space. So, I'm a massive believer, I'm a huge advocate for this innate healing that our bodies can do. And I was gutted that I'd never found it prior. When I was working full time in the dog grooming salon, I just went for a massage once a month to try and help me with my achy back. Like, I wish that I had been around practitioners such as yourself, such as the chiros back then, because our bodies work hard. When we work with animals, that's a lot of energy, there's a lot of physical toll as well. If you're in the dog groomer or the vet physios, they're on their knees and they're doing the massage themselves. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Too right. Like I know you're a young mom right now. Like when I got into Reiki, I had a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a newborn, and our children didn't sleep. All 3 of them didn't sleep, right? And I didn't know about chiropractic. So as we well know, sleep deprivation and constant stress depletes your immune system, right? So I went to see my GP and I said, please give me something to boost my immune system. I'm catching every single cold that's going, And what I needed at the very minimum was a little bit of help with sometimes sleeping. A nanny, or like obviously your GP can't prescribe that, but they can make sure they were clued up. But instead, like they wanted to put me on antibiotics, antihistamines, and one other thing, like steroids.
Yeah.
Oh, let's cover all our bases. Except like none of these things boost the immune system. So I'm so with you, like if we knew how amazing our bodies are and what they need to thrive, it would be so much easier to take really good care of ourselves. And so when we thrive, everything else thrives, right? Our families thrive, our businesses thrive. So that is the key. And if we have, what's beautiful about Reiki is that you can use it to look after yourself. So absolutely self-treat and keep your own energy good. So I don't know, like life's been full on for us. Like we've had, as everyone died, but like we've had a number of fairly impactful curveballs and life challenges. And I just don't know how people do it who don't have like something like that to keep themselves well.
Yeah, for sure. It's amazing. And once you know, it's like, how did I ever not know? It's such a fascinating subject. And as you were talking there, I just made a little note. You're talking about observation, like you bring that awareness through to your hands and that makes you more observant of what's happening. And how do you think that that's helped you in other areas of life?
Yeah, so one of the ways I use Reiki for, obviously, is to keep myself well resourced, right? And I think you're very aware of kind of a mindset and where your head is at. So this is one way, and the philosophy that comes with Reiki, as well as the practice, is one way of keeping my headspace good and clean. And when it isn't, to recalibrate, And so we both know that everything in life thrives on human relationships. So if my energy is good, it's so much easier to kind of connect with other people, for other people to trust you, for other people to be curious about what you're doing.
Yeah. Oh, I just love it. And, you're talking about the speed of healing being so much faster, having had this care. And, tell me about your Reiki practitioners and the results they've had with the animals they're working with.
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind is actually my experience with animals. So most of the time I work with humans, but when an injured animal comes into my world, Reiki, I think, it's probably kind of fair to say it attracts people who are really caring by nature anyway, right? but it probably makes that impulse stronger and opens the heart more. So like if I see a creature suffering in my environment, it's a natural impulse to use the resources that you have to help them. So like I don't go out seek animals to treat. Like I love humans. I love animals too, but like my calling is to help humans.
Yeah.
But if there's an animal around, absolutely, you just want to help them. So I'm thinking, when you're asking me that question, I was thinking of a horse I was treating. Because when my daughter was a teenager, I had the privilege, because of her riding, her passion for riding, I had the privilege of kind of being part of a busy horse yard, right? And so like I was thinking about how I visualized natural healing for you by looking at wound healing and how everything tends to accelerate and speed up. So like there was a horse on the yard that 4 years old, had been wild in a field, had never kind of encountered other animals or humans or a lot of busy activity, and was just like so hyper curious about everything that was going on in the yard, and it had sweet itch. So sweet itch, like your animal lovers, you care for people with dogs, but they will likely know this is like a skin condition. It's an allergy to mosquito bites, and it makes the skin break out everywhere, and it's quite difficult to get on top of.
For them.
Yeah. It's really horrible.
Yeah.
It's really, really horrible. So I was getting the chance to work with this horse using the Jikiden Reiki first aid technique, and while the wounds were drying up as in front of my eyes, like, this is not instant, like, but within 5-10 minutes you can see the wounds drying up, the horse fell asleep. This was like a horse that was in the middle of a busy yard and absolutely easily spooked and totally interested in what was happening. And so like why I'm telling you this is because animals trust their instinct. And so if they've never experienced Reiki before, you can see them like the first couple of seconds, like they prick up, what is it? And then they relax. They can feel this is like a really safe, calming energy. And so like I've used this on wild animals. I've used this on, I live in the middle of nowhere. Sometimes we get wild birds, big wild birds crashing in our windows. So I've used this on stunned birds. And even when they're already coming to again, like they just sit with you. Like a wild animal, they just trust you because it feels safe. And then once they've recalibrated and come out of that state of shock, they just leave. But it's unheard of for a wild animal to spend 20 minutes, half an hour with you unrestrained, voluntarily. And so like my cats, used to have 3 of them. So they would catch mice and then release them in the house. And I have become an expert mice catcher with my hands. So, like the time it takes to catch a baby mouse and take it back outside the house, just from holding it in my hands, it's tame. So we have video footage of that, like a mouse sitting in my hand for ages, nibbling at a cheese and just grooming itself, totally relaxed. So like I have trained practitioners, like animal physiotherapists, who, they don't advertise that they're Reiki practitioners because they're physiotherapists.
Yeah.
But like their clients always comment that even the most distressed animal that doesn't let anyone near them, not even their owners sometimes, they will calm down. And suddenly the animal physiotherapist gets to do their job because the animal trusts them.
Yeah, that's
So that's really quite cool.
Yeah, it's massive. Because what I love about animals the most is they don't fake it. Like, there's no like, placebo effect. In us humans, we can go, oh, like, I've seen this person, now I feel better, and you don't know whether that is true or not. But with an animal, that's just not their forte. They're either better or they're not, and if they're unwell, then it shows. And I first experienced anything like this with someone that did T-touch. And again, it was a young horse. He was wild. So I used to help, when I was a teenager, I used to help someone that owned a load of horses. And his name was Mac. And he was pretty scary to be around. Like, he was a maniac. And yeah, same thing happened. He fell asleep while this practitioner was there. And then he was so much easier to handle and ride. That's not, oh, a placebo, or this just kind of happened at the same time. Like, it was a direct correlation of animal healing. And it was so fascinating. It's such an amazing world. And when it proves what we can do for a human, when we can do it with an animal, because humans are so much more complex, right? Would you say that, Gisela? I
agree 100%. 100%. Yeah. And so like placebo is something, like when I go out there and say I practice Reiki, like the world is different now. But when I first wanted to practice Reiki professionally in 2006, like I couldn't find a single clinic in the borders that would have me, Later, I found out that many of them practice Reiki too, but would never own up to it for fear of risking their professional credibility at that point. It was really like seeing the local witch doctor. So like people on the strongest referrals would take 2 years before they would pick up the phone and make an appointment. So that's very, very, very different now. But it's not exactly like the natural healing perspective is not the lens that we've grown up with and that our children grew up with in the UK or in the Western world. So like often Reiki skeptics will kind of say, oh, it's all placebo, And so the first thing I want to say is if my mind can make a knee joint heal without an operation, just because I believe I've had an operation and it benefits me, that is amazing. Give me placebo any day. So I have no objection to placebo. And I think humans, we can absolutely get tied up in our own thought. We overthink everything. Whereas your animal, absolutely, that it proved to me that what's happening when you give a Reiki treatment is so much more than placebo because they have no expectation whatsoever. Yes. And yet they pay attention, they notice this feels good, and then they trust it, and they're really intuitive. So like I was working with this little bird, and so one of the advantages in traditional Japanese Reiki is the concept of byosen. That's the body feedback that we pay attention to, and the sensations that we feel in the practitioner's hands. So like your dog can tell you I hurt here, So my hands will be able to find where the problem area is by paying attention to the body's response to ki, to energy coming in. But like it was this tiny little budgie, and it's like actually quite hard to kind of figure out what's going on for a budgie just because of the scale. They're so small. And so like this bird being so intuitive, it would just shift its body. So all I had to do is hold my hand and the bird would move so that it got the energy exactly where it needed it. And this was like a bird that was ready to keel over on its perch, It honestly couldn't even hold itself up anymore, So after half an hour of Reiki and climbing into my hand where it needed it most, it started like exercising its wings really vigorously, and then it flew back in its cage and it was fine for another couple of months. But that's just to say, I agree with you. Not having strong belief systems, not having a skeptical mind that gets in the way, just being open to direct experience gives animals a super advantage. And it proves that there is something very tangible that's happening. I feel like if there were a strong drive to investigate the impact of Reiki energy on bodies and minds, it would absolutely be possible to prove it. For example, when I start giving humans Reiki, most people, everyone is stressed now. We've been through a pandemic. We are bombarded with scary messages every day. Our everyday lives are stressful. We're trained to follow the dopamine hits. Everything says on. And people are totally unable to switch off. Like they think that relaxing means Netflix and a glass of wine. That's numbing. So Reiki, similar to an animal going like, oh, this feels good. I trust this. It hits the switch off button that people have forgotten they have. And it resets the nervous system to really deep rest and repair state. And then things start happening in the brain. Not for everyone, but for more and more people, like they get amazing experiences, like the whole kind of, they see colors inside their head, like really beautiful colorful light or anything like that. Like I am convinced if you hooked up a brain that's having these experiences to the right kind of electrodes measuring devices, you would absolutely be able to demonstrate that there's a very real, very tangible effect. It's just like no one within the Reiki community, well, that's maybe not true, but I don't know of many people in the Reiki community who A, have the skill set, and B, have the institutional connections and the money to fund this. Whereas like the pharmaceutical industry is not going to fund it because anyone can practice Reiki, right? So like what I'm saying is it's like the intellectual and the financial and the institutional muscle that's lacking, not the evidence that Reiki has a very, very, very tangible effect.
Yeah, I mean, I personally used Reiki while I was going through, woman was amazing. It was her husband that was a Reiki practitioner. So she was like a white coat counsellor, but she was also a hypnotherapist. And then her husband did Reiki. So I went to her for white coat counselling. And then she talked about like her husband and what he could do. And you're talking about colours. I was going through this process to trust myself again because I made this belief that I was making the wrong choices and I didn't trust what choices I was going to make going forwards in regards to love. So it was actually through the Reiki session that it was like we captured the exact moment where I made this belief about myself, and it was purple, and it was like, and I had to go back and like capture it, and it was like I can believe in myself. It was the best healing ever because it was led me on to my gorgeous Beyonce now that we've got this house and this family, and he's the best man in the world, and he always has been, but I needed to trust that I was choosing correctly and choosing him from a state of wellness rather than needing. And it's phenomenal. I just think it's something that I really wanted to bring you on to talk about because I wasn't that aware of it. And for it to be out there in the world and to be hearing that there's practitioners that are using it alongside their therapies, even though they might not be advertising it, I would love for it to be seen as not so woo-woo in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I find it really fascinating. And what I didn't know was because of your like full-on educational background prior to this, so that kind of connection for you and the frustration that I can see that you're like, I wish I had studies to prove the results that we're getting from this.
Yeah, totally. And like I can see, like, I don't know if you're aware of the work of Joe Dispenza, but he's quite big in chiropractic circles, right?
Yeah.
So like as a chiropractor, he has the kind of scientific knowledge, the brain knowledge, anatomy knowledge, all of that. And he has the community to study, and he has the financial resources, his own financial resources, and the drive. And so like the data that he has accumulated of spontaneous healings using his methodology, not Reiki. But the point I'm making is that it's absolutely possible to measure the tangible effects of energy healing. And neuroscientists are desperate to get their hands on his data sets, right? Me, I'm not like a scientist like that, like I couldn't be bothered doing all that work, but I'm really, really, really grateful that there are people who are doing it because it helps build a bridge to the people who can't trust direct experience, right? And who need some form of measurement to validate it. Yeah. But I'm convinced that it's possible to do, absolutely. And so like in response to your like personal healing experience, that is beautiful. And like absolutely, Reiki can go so deep and go back to the moment where unhelpful patterning formed, and it can be undone, And so like my initial attraction to traditional Japanese Reiki was, I always knew this, like I somehow know this. I was born knowing this. But my initial attraction to traditional Japanese Reiki is because of its body focus, and because you can articulate why bodies struggle to heal. Like from our point of view, that's to do with chemical, mental, emotional, and physical stress. And so like the chemical stress, that's toxins. And living in 2025, it's impossible not to be bombarded by 1001 or maybe 10,000 man-made chemicals that our biology was never designed to handle. So, then because it's too much, it can't be gotten rid of as fast as it's coming in. So that's why it accumulates in the tissues. It goes deep, 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 deep into the body. And so that's, from our point of view, that's a root cause for chronic and degenerative disease processes. And so the skills in my hands help me find the places where these accumulations are. Then we put energy in, and suddenly the body is remembering to do housekeeping, and the cleansing happens better and faster, and it kind of just kicks into a higher gear. So when I can articulate that kind of, anyone is open to hearing that. Anyone can understand that, and anyone knows that it's true. Because even like the 20-year-olds now, degenerative disease processes were a thing for old people like me. It's no longer the case. It's like teenagers and children who have like chronic disease processes already happening. And everyone, even very young people, have stiff necks and shoulders. Like for us, that's the early warning signs. Okay, here's a body that's accumulating stuff that's eventually going to result in your immune system getting really sluggish, dormant. So like now we have the antidote. And so like I'm saying this because for the first 10 years, that's all I talked about. Because being an academic, not a particularly new agey person, I'm a very spiritual person, but not a particularly new agey person. So this helps me to reach anyone. And I can't talk to a vet or I can't talk to a GP because the principles are intelligible to anyone. And, like you can't really argue with them either. Like you might still not understand why Reiki helps, but you might be open enough to put it to the test and then see it working, right?
Yeah. When you say body,
sorry. Can go so much deeper. And that's what I've spent the next 10 years of my career doing, like exploring the mind and exploring all the inner conflicts that people have, right? And so, for example, it's a well-known fact. I'm not saying like people get cancer because of their inner conflicts. I'm saying that toxins, etc., none of these things help for thriving, right? And it's a well-known fact that people who develop cancer often have like strong inner conflicts and fears. So all of these things, the mental emotional patterning, it can be undone and it can be a reset. And so one of the things I love about working with humans is that they come in for their, like, they can't sleep or they have a stomach ulcer or they're anxious or whatever. But after like a couple of blocks of treatments, so like 12 sessions in, they are so much more in touch with themselves. So they remember, like, when we're children, we have certain like preferences and then we discard them because parents think we should be lawyers or something. In my instance, my father thought I should be a bank manager. Thank God I never listened to him. Point being, it brings us back to ourselves and where we thrive, and so like that's kind of like a context for your experience, it really kind of took you back to that imprint that got in the way of you trusting you. And that's a natural side effect of Reiki, receiving a lot of Reiki, that you really do connect with you.
Yeah, I feel like the people that are listening, they might have chosen this animal path later on in life after going after something they thought they wanted innately. They knew they wanted to work with animals, they wanted to love on them, make them feel better and healthy. So it's getting back to yourself is just incredible. And then to be able to be good in yourself while you're caring for animals, I just can see this leveling up happening. You know, the more that we look after ourselves and explore these types of ways that can support us, it will level up our ability to care and look after animals and look after each other, because like burnout's a massive thing in the pet industry because we love so much. We care so deeply about what these animals are doing and how we care for them. And I think that on top of pressures from how to run a business, like it is just a perfect recipe for burnout. So if someone was listening to this right now and was really struggling with their business, feel like they're feeling those feelings of burnout or overwhelm, what would you say would be your like top 3 tips?
Learn Reiki, in the first instance, as a self-care tool.
Yeah.
Like, because as you say, like our energy impacts others. So if we work with animals, they are very intuitive, you know, and our own pets pick up on our stress levels and all of that. And, you know, like it's hard on an animal because they are so sensitive. So like looking after ourselves is the very best thing that we can do for ourselves and also for the living beings that we interact with, including our family and including animals. So yeah, absolutely, self-care. It's so easy. I get that kind of tendency to want to take care of everyone else before myself. Like that's like, I think that's a wiring that especially females suffer from, right? Yeah. And then eventually we learn that it's counterproductive and it doesn't work. So yes, learn Reiki, use it on yourself, fill your own cup. Healing never ends. But the end point of healing is becoming a really peaceful, really loving human being. And when that's the case, then everything else thrives. So if I'm starting a new business and I'm overwhelmed and I don't know how to get clients in, and yes, there's a degree of learning involved, there's a skill set involved. And so like I would recommend you, Elle, you know, to help people build those muscles and that skill set. And like they're only really going to kick in well, like even marketing, you know, like you can market until the cows come home if people don't trust you and if it feels icky and if it feels manipulative. Yes. And so like the first thing that's necessary before any business building and any marketing and any scaling works is human relationship, building trust. And for that, you have to be willing to show who you are and to be that person who is willing to care about others and let them know that you care about them before you care about your business. So you're the person that is curious about other people because they're well-resourced. If I'm burned out and I'm worried about my bank account, my energy is coming across in the wrong way. People can smell fear and people can smell desperation. And so like if I show up well-resourced with an empty bank account but well-resourced, then I can show up for the other person. I can be fully present to them and pay attention to where they're at and what they need, and then they become curious about what I do, and I can offer what I do in relation to where they're at. And suddenly,
service, isn't it? Like it's just service. When we're looking after and sharing what it is that we can do with our business, it's how do we care and look after people. It's fascinating, isn't it? Because it's not sales, it's not ick, it's actually just I love and this is what I can do.
And it's really relevant to you and this is why, you know. But for that, I need to build that connection first and get to know the other person and find out why and where what I have to offer is relevant to them. And then it's an easy yes. And so from then on, I take really good care of the person and their needs. And I have the skills to ask for the testimonial when they've had a good result. And I put it out there. And suddenly it's other people speaking on my behalf, you know, because why should anyone believe me when I'm passionate about Reiki and think like I may have an agenda? But like the minute other people share their real authentic experiences, that has clout. Yes. And so that all starts with being in a good space yourself, relationship building, being really present and really actively paying attention to the other person, all of which you can't do if you're in survival. So that's why I would say top tip number 1 2 and 3 I learn Reiki. And number 1 and 2 I learn Reiki, and number 3 is like absolutely CL and build that skill set and invest in yourself, because it's not rocket science, is it? It's just having fun at the end of the day, but you have to do it, and you have to have the willingness to show up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a paycheck later. Thanks for that. No, I really appreciate that. It's been such a pleasure to see you, your journey, how you grew, like from our original connection to like now. It's just been phenomenal. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. If you want to get your own copy of Fetch More Clients, I'll pop a link below. Amazon's your best place to go, or message me directly. I might have a signed copy that you can get a copy of. And Gisela, if we want to find out more about you, what you do, how can we connect with you?
Actually have not marketed myself for various reasons for 10 years. That's why I bought your book, Elle, because my experience of working with you, like when I was working with you, I was building an integrative therapy center. So that's where my focus was. And so now I'm coming back to me and coming back to building a Reiki school, actually. And the reason I instantly picked up this book when I knew it existed is because I know from working with you that everything that feels overwhelming suddenly becomes like structured and very doable, right? And where is the place that I need to focus right now out of like these 10 million things that business coaches and marketing people tell me I need to do because that's what they're good at teaching. But I might not be at the stage where that's relevant to me. Yeah. So that's why like having a coach like you who really does listen, you know, and finds out where the other person is, what they're trying to do, what stage of the journey they're in. Then like you can say, okay, this is the skill. This is where you start. This is where you focus for the next 2 or 3 weeks and get that done. And then we'll talk more, right? So I've forgotten what question you asked me, but you asked how can people reach out to me. So the best way to reach out to me is my ancient unupdated website, which is simply jikidenreiki.co.uk. And yes, now that I'm focusing on my own business rather than helping everyone else's therapy businesses, I will soon update my website and make it a little bit more user-friendly. But in the meantime, it's beautiful and it's documentary style. So like everything on there will speak to you to who I am and what Reiki is and how it serves both people in numerous circumstances and animals.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you so, so much. I've loved this. It's been such a pleasure to see you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Elle. It's just really nice to connect with you again. Thank you, thank you, thank you.